Hello, I'm Toby from Roustabout Theatre, and welcome to the fifth in our series of Lights Up On, which is a series of webinars where we meet people from right across the industry, talk about their work, what their job entails, the path which led them to where they are, and hopefully give some advice for people interested in working in the industry, drama students, aspiring theatre makers, emerging theatre makers, plus just those ordinarily interested audience members who like to know what's going on behind the scenes. So far we've met Kate Cross from The Egg, Nikki Miles-Weldon from Grey Eye Theatre, Gemma Brooks, who is a freelance production manager, Tarek Merchant, who is a composer, musical director and acting musician, and today we are joined by Dilpesh Patel, who is the head of technical production at Birmingham Old Rep Theatre, and I'll be asking Dil some questions in a moment. Those of you who are watching this live, if you have questions for Dil, if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a little box called Q&A, and if you type your questions into that box, we'll try and answer as many of them as possible. So, Dil, hello.
Hello.
First of all, could you tell us what you do? What is a head of technical production at Birmingham Old Rep Theatre? What do you do?
So, head of technical production is a fancy title for technical manager. So that role, so my role is basically I manage a team of full-time technicians, one of which is an apprentice. I liaise with visiting companies to contact them and ask them what their requirements are for their shows that come in. It could be from a simple stand-up comedian who wants a mic and a stick on stage, or it could be a complex theatre show that has a full lighting rig, a full sound rig, that sort of thing. And just to make sure that what they want we can do, and if we can't, we compromise to make their show work in our venue. I attend meetings, so these could be production meetings for small shows, or it could be liaising with companies for site visits that want to come into the venue to have a look around. I attend a weekly operations meeting once a week, so all the different areas in the theatre, we all get together just to give a brief update on what's been going on and find out the latest happenings outside of our realm, and obviously as part of the role I'm also assigned production manager for the big Christmas show. So yeah, fingers crossed that it will be happening this year. So yeah, that'll be that's part of my role as well. Yeah, so that's, and as well as also being a full-time technician, so being a presence on stage, being duty tech on shows, being the first port of call for companies and people to come to me for anything. If they have an issue, if they have a problem, or just basically me being a techie, doing a focus session, or helping to build a set, carrying out maintenance, that sort of thing, really. And also I compile staff schedules. So for all of us, I sit down once a week and compile 4 weeks worth of staff rotas for the technical team. So yeah, that's a quick brief of what I do and what I am. So yeah.
Great. One of the reasons that we were very interested in talking to you is, well, there are a number of reasons. The first is that Birmingham Old Rep is what's called a receiving house. So over the course of a year, a number of different companies of different sizes, a number of different sorts of performers will come into the venue, and you're responsible for all their technical needs, aren't you? For those. Yeah. So you see a whole wide range of work from visiting companies and the different sorts of technical things they need. Plus also Birmingham Old Rep produces a show with Birmingham Ormston Academy, BOA, that's a Christmas show, so you work as a production manager. So you have a full range of responsibility. Does that cover all areas of technical work that you're looking at?
My role, yes, but also for the technical team, it's the same principle as well. So as you said, we are a receiving house, so the work that we get in, like I said, like I touched on briefly, it could be a straight stand-up comedy show, it could be a touring theatre show, or it could be an Amdram, or it could be a youth show, or it could be a hire as such as well. So we cover pretty much everything. So, you know, we're all, even though we've all got our specialisms, we all have to sometimes ditch our specialisms to either fly, elect up, or be sound engineer on a show or something. But basically, because we're all employed as a theatre technician, it doesn't mean we're not just employed as a sound engineer or a lighting designer or lighting engineer. We all have to dip in and out of our of all areas within the technical realm, basically. So yeah. So when it comes to, say, for example, let's say, well, I don't know. Let's take a theatre show, for example, one that doesn't bring its own operators. So my specialism is stage and LX, but mainly stage. So I'm hiding on fly floor most of the time. But there could be other times when I might be having to do a focus session, or having to press go on LX, or be a sound operator, as well as instead of being a flyman or a stage manager. So and that's the same principle with the rest of the team as well. So for example, we've got one of our full-time technicians who's a sound specialist. He will have to jump on LX, or he will have to stage manage, or he will have to duty tech. So so for the theatre show that comes in, if they don't have their own operators, then we have to obviously jump in and be an operator. As standard, most visiting companies get 2 technicians as standard. So which means that sometimes there's no choice but to jump on LX, or there might be a time that I might have to jump on sound, or there might be a time when I might have to jump on flies. You know, it's varied, and it's the same sort of principle that you'll find in most venues, that you are going to get what they call general technicians, who have to cover the entire spectrum, basically, of a show or of the technical field. It's not just, you know, if you're lucky to be in a venue that has, I don't know, 9 technicians, most of those will have their own specialism, and they will only stick to that specialism. But other times they might, like I said, they will have to ditch their specialism and do something that they're good at, but they're not as strong at. But it's the same. Like I said, it's the same in all venues, really. It's a fine line, really, between between specialising in a field to being a general tech, because sometimes some people will be stuck in their ways and say, I'm only going to do sound, I'm only going to do lighting, that, you know. But but then what comes with that is the pay grade, and, you know, I think most theatres will always employ a gen tech, because they know that they won't have to fork out for somebody who's a specialist in a certain field. So it's, yeah, that's basically what we do, you know. Yeah.
It's, later on in this series, we're going to be meeting a lighting designer and a sound designer and a stage manager who are working on a Roustabout show, which is going to be a touring piece. And what we'll discover, I think, is that there's a hierarchy in theatre, and as you move up the sort of scale of the production, people become more and more specialised. But at in the middle scale and small scale touring work, and in receiving houses like Birmingham Old Rep, actually the breadth of experience and the breadth of skills and the breadth of opportunities is much greater. And it's, I guess, for people who are interested in working in the technical side of theatre, that's one of the questions that they could be asking themselves. And do they want this wonderful general experience, or do they want to become specialists in a particular area?
Yeah.
And another reason that I was very interested in talking with you is actually about the Birmingham Old Rep itself. So for those who don't know Birmingham, it's a city of many theatres. And could you just fill in us a little bit about the Birmingham Old Rep? Because it's a very interesting and historical building, isn't it?
Yeah, we are 107 years old, so we're not quite as old as the Hippodrome or the Alex, but we're on that same level. Built in 4 months, opened in 1913, and it's a Grade 1 listed building. It was the Old Rep. It was the first repertory theatre in the UK, opened by Barry Jackson, who formed his own company before the Old Rep was built. But then when the Old Rep was built, he moved his company of actors and himself into that building. It's a building that has a lot of that has its place within theatre, heritage-wise. Famous names as Derek Jacobi, Laurence Olivier, Albert Finney, Brian Cox, not the Professor, have all played at the Old. Have all started their careers at the Old Rep. I think it was in the 1970s, I believe, when the space became too small for them for their shows. So they moved to a new home on Broad Street in Centenary Square, and that building is now the Birmingham Rep. So we get confused quite a lot with the Birmingham Rep and the Old Rep, but their life started at the Old Rep. Yeah, like I said, we had loads of famous actors appear there. It's a Grade 1 listed building. We seat 385. But it's very yeah. It sits in theatre history basically. You know, it's one of those buildings that we'd be lost without in some ways. If you're a theatre anorak, and if you find people like the Frank Matcham Society as well, who are a society who are interested and dedicated to theatre architecture and the history and the heritage that most old theatres in the country have, and we're certainly up there. For me personally, it's definitely the oldest building venue that I've worked in since I've been doing this thing. Mm-hmm. And the building itself has undergone changes, like all theatres do. So even though what you see won't be the original, but when you come to the venue, what you see won't be the original features, because as time has evolved and things have changed, and it's keeping up with the times basically. So,
what's as a technician and a head of technical production, what's it like working in a building which isn't purpose built for modern day lighting equipment, modern day sound equipment, modern day flying, and how do the two sit together?
It's interesting actually. It does even though it does pose a challenge in some ways. We have to try and make it work, but like I said, because of times evolving, because the auditorium itself is made for voice. It's not made for modern day sound. It's not made for microphones or heavy bands, But when you see that come into a venue that was built for voice, it's another way of using the venue different to what the purpose of the building was. So if we have a tribute band in who bring a full PA, and they crank it to 1,000 dB, you do get some, you do get some bounce back, and a lot of the acoustics don't tend to play in their hands. It does work. Don't get me wrong. And same with lighting as well. We are able to have intelligent fixtures in the venue, and again, it works perfectly. If you've got a trim height that's 7 or 8 meters, and you've got a full rig of 20 moving lights, it's again, it works, and we are able to facilitate it to a degree. But obviously back then there wasn't, back in 1913 and all those years ago, there wasn't such thing as a 3-phase or anything like that. So as the years have gone on and as the electrical regs have evolved every year, as they always do, we are able to facilitate it, you know, by putting in our own 3-phase system and whatnot. But it's sometimes, like all venues, things work, things don't work. And, you know, we always have that issue of trying to find a balance between making it work, and if we can make do, we can make do. But it's the way I see it is, you know, you can't put sticking plaster on a problem. So yeah, make it work, but make it simple for everyone to use. And if you try and do something adventurous, again, don't go overboard, because you are going to knock something out that we need. So yeah, it does pose its challenges sometimes, but you know, we are always able to make it work, and that's down to the, you know, the skills, the specialisms, and the knowledge that people come into the venue with, or us as a full-time team do as well. You know, it's not just a case of we can't have it because it's not going to work, or don't bring that expensive moving head that does, I don't know, that can fill a stadium, because we can't give it, we haven't got the facility to provide its own power. You know, everything has got to share. Yeah. So, you know, so yeah, moving lights have got to share the same power source. Sound equipment has to have it, a PA has to be on a clean feed away from every other electrical supply. So we can make, yeah, like I said, we can make things work, and it's not always the case of no. I think Gemma said it last week, a couple of weeks ago. You know, it's that whole balance of compromising, and part of my role when I'm talking to companies is when they send me a rider, and I'll go through it and I'll say, thanks for the rider, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, but when it comes to that, can we do this instead? And 9 times out of 10, the company managers, technical managers who come with the show, they are really understanding, and they say, yeah, that's fine. Like a few weeks ago, we had a bit of a tight turnaround between 2 shows, and they wanted to bring their own lighting rig in, but we needed to leave our rig in at the same time. So I said, we can hang your rig, but are you okay for us to leave our rig in at the same time? Because we've got a show in the day after, and we're not going to have an hour the next day to turn it all around. And the touring manager said, yeah, that's fine, thanks for letting me know. And you know, and so that we were able to leave our rig up, and they were able to rig on top of us. Which was basically just unplugging a few fixtures, plugging theirs in, and then when it came to get out, taking theirs down and then putting ours back into the right places. So that's not an issue. I think when a big show, say for example, when we had Frantic Assembly 2 years ago, when they brought their brilliant show, The Unreturning, to us, that was a challenge, trying to power everything that they brought in, and because we're not capable of holding show, we're not quite capable of putting on shows on that kind of scale. So we made it work, we made it fit just about, and but yeah, it was a bit of a challenge at the time to get it all in and working, you know, and like all shows, you know, not everything is going to work it's not going to work first time, and you know, as the run progresses, things are going to break down, and so, you know, when you do tech notes in the morning before performance, that's your time to get fixtures swapped out, to readjust sound levels, or to readjust set scenery. Stage management do their resets as well at the same time. So yeah, it's problem solving, and that's one of the things that we have to, you know, but as part of the team, it's an essential skill set.
Yeah, and that's actually true of all parts of the theatre industry. Is that the constant balance between the sort of artistic, creative, technical vision and what is possible. And it's the problem solving that makes the theatre, isn't it? It's the problem solving, the collaboration, the all of those skills are crucial for any role in theatre, whether it's technical or front of house or on stage or in the initial creative team. It's always about how can we solve this problem, meet this artistic vision, but balance it against what is physically possible.
Totally, yeah.
How did you end up doing your job? What's your career path as well?
I went to college for 3 years, but I didn't do a technical theatre course. I actually did a performing arts in drama. So I did a GMVQ and then I did a BTEC level 3. Don't judge me. And then I kind of lost interest and love for the acting side. So I wanted to, so I thought, well, okay, technical theatre is something I've always been interested in. So I helped out on a couple of shows at college during my third year, just pressing go on lighting basically, and then did a couple of Amjam gigs as stage manager, lighting and sound up, and then managed to bag a job at the RSC as a stage technician for 6 months. So that job was basically stage crew, building sets, doing shows, doing changeovers, get-ins, get-outs, that sort of thing. Then I got a job in education, working for Hulse College, which is where I studied as a performing arts technician. So covering all areas, lighting, sound, set, and various other things as well that they could pile on me. And then I got a job at Mac in Birmingham as senior performing arts technician. Then I moved from Mac to Warwick Arts as assistant electrician, which is a less fancy way of saying lighting technician. Working within the theatre, the studio, and their concert hall. And then from Warwick, I came to the old rep / Bower as theatre tech, and worked my way up really. Became deputy head of technical last year, then became head of technical this year. So that was my route into it. I think, you know, you are gonna, if you're somebody who's dead set on becoming an actor, great. But then it is easy to fall out of love or fall out of love with it. And it's the same as well if you train in technical theatre, but you want to become an actor, then it's easy to jump ship. Or, you know, if you start off as a stage manager, get bored of it, again, jump ship. But like, and I think there have been a couple of instances where I've seen that, particularly on the fringe scene, where you know, you're anything and everything when you're if you're, you know, when you take a show to Edinburgh, or if you're taking a show up and down the country to schools or to local venues or something. Sometimes you are having to be like an acting ASM, or I don't know, you're having to press go on sound on a particular sound effect from side of stage. So having that, it's like having it's like wearing two different invisible hats, in that kind of sense, but they both kind of lend to each other. And I think as well what you said, I think going back a few points as well, what you said about problem solving, it's you know, problem solving is it helps develop relationships as well within a company. If you're, you know, if you've both got the common goal to rectify a problem and to resolve a situation, and if you do a good job, that just strengthens the relationship that you have with other people that you work with. Or even if you don't manage to resolve the situation, you know, you can both turn to each other and say, look, we tried, we'll bash our heads again, and then go back to it. And I think as well, and that's the same thing that you can say with, you know, people that do this, that go through the path that I took. You know, you know, it's when you're an actor, you face difficulties, you know, and it's but yeah, you know, you problem solve yourself, or you problem solve with the other actors, and you know, the path that I took, you know, I'm not gonna beat around the bush and say that it was handed to me on a silver spoon, because it wasn't, you know, and it was difficult. You know, but you know, we've all been there at some point in our lives, and you know, where it hasn't gone to how we envisaged. But yeah, yeah, I'm thinking of rambling now, but yeah.
Well, and what's interesting, because again, the people that we'll meet later on in this series, Mim and Jenny and Jess, all trained at Bristol Vic Theatre School, so they did a specific 3-year or 2-year course in production arts. Whereas, if I've got this right, your experience has been hands-on and has been taught by simply working with people and watching them and being taught things alongside, I imagine, also with specific training courses in all this kind of health and safety procedures and stuff. And for those people who are interested in entering the performance industry, there is no single correct route, is there? It's just there are multiple pathways, and it's about what's the best way for you, I guess, isn't it? Or what?
I think if you're somebody that's very academic and believes that you want to go to university, then by all means, you know, I thoroughly encourage it. Go to uni, get the degree. You never know where it could take you. You know, you could be doing, you could be working with a small company, you could be going freelance, or you could be working for a big theatre, or working on cruise ships even as well. But if you're somebody that that doesn't feel that they can cope academically, and you want to do it the way that I took it, the way I went, then get in touch with people, make contacts. You know, again, something that Gemma said a couple of weeks ago was have a good address book, and we know when you start, and it's definitely beneficial to have a good address book. But yeah, like talk to, I don't know, local theatre, talk to teachers, talk to anybody who works in the industry that you might be friends with. Ask them how they got into it and how you might want to get into it. You know, I mean, when I started out, there was a couple of Amjams that were starting up, and I basically just went along and said what I wanted to do, and you know, that took me on board, really. And I think also if I hadn't have volunteered or chose to assist on the shows that I did at college, even though it was just press and go, those are the small moments that you can go back to and say, look, you know, that they can go back on, you can look back on and say, I started off press and go on LX, and now I'm managing a professional theatre.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously, you know, there are people that I've got to credit. I'm not going to name names, but there are people that have gone along the way, and like you said as well, when you do get into it, you are picking up, you are learning on the job. So because the RSC was my first professional gig, a lot of the stuff that I was being taught basically by people that I've worked there for 20 plus years. You know, if it was just how to fly, how to tie a knot, or what a full black was, or what a leg was, you know, that sort of thing. And again, like I said, you know, the RSC was a great experience in my training, because you know, when I've gone to work in different venues, if I hadn't picked up the terminology, or if I didn't pick up if I didn't know what a certain item was, you know, then I would have been scuppered in some ways and probably would have been found out. You know, again, it's, imposter syndrome, I think, is what they call, you know.
We've heard of imposter syndrome in another webinar. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that I'd like to pass on to you, but it's really interesting to hear your career path, because it actually mirrors the way that theatre was learned for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Actually, the study of theatre as an academic subject or a set of skills that can be passed on academically is really, really recent. And there was the first university drama course was in the early 60s. And so actually most people for hundreds of years learned the way that you did, which is people passing on skills. And theatre is as much a craft as it is an art. And I think we've got very clear evidence for that here. So the one question is, what made you want to work in theatre in the first place? Is there a defining moment, or what led you towards this industry?
So when I was 14, I saw a production at the RSC, which was Henry V, and because of that experience, it has now become it is now my favourite Shakespeare. But I think just seeing that show and being in that auditorium, being in the old main house, as it were, that made me decide that I wanted a career in performing arts. At the time, it was definitely the acting side. And I remember going to see my drama teacher every day and saying, I want a career in drama, I want a career in drama. When I was 12, 13, I was doing a drama club every week. Again, it was just purely acting, but I enjoyed it. And it was something, and you know, I wasn't very good at sports at the time. And it wasn't really much else that I knew I wanted to get into. So it was definitely that sort of moment that made me decide I wanted to do theatre. And it wasn't until later on in 2004, I think, when I decided I wanted to do technical theatre. So that was my thinking bit. That was why I chose performing arts as a career. I'll be honest, it's a different career to what other people to what my other friends do for their day jobs. But to me, it doesn't bother me. You know, you know, I love the industry that I work in, and you know, I'm glad that I chose it. Really, I think if I'd just seen that show at the RSC, then I don't know what I probably would have been doing.
Was that was it the Kenneth Branagh Henry V?
No, I think it was.
Did it have rain all the way through it?
I don't remember it. I don't think it was Kenneth Branagh. It was. It was in. I thought it was Will Houston,
right?
Who played William. Who played Henry. One moment that stuck out for me during that performance was somebody being hung on stage, and I just remember the whole auditorium just gasping in disbelief at that moment. I remember the person I was sitting next to at the time. She just like grabbed my knee really hard, and you know, at the interval, she was like, "Yeah, I just can't believe I just seen that," and I'm like, "Yeah,
yeah."
No, I think that's probably yeah.
Another question we've got here is I've just got many panels open. What aspect of your job gives you the most buzz? That feeling of yes, this is exactly what I should be doing.
Ooh, probably when I'm on a fly floor, and because for anyone that doesn't know, the old rep is what we call a hemp house. Most playhouses are counterweight, so as opposed to having 3 or more lines to a bar, most other playhouses will have 2 to bring the bar in onto stage or to bring the bar out up into the fly tower. So let's take, for example, last year's Christmas show, I had 18 fly cues, and there was 5, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 that were in quick succession, what we call follow-ons. So the moment that I'd take one item out, I was being given the go for my next fly cue straight after. And when you're frantically cleating off a bar and you're getting that go, you're suddenly running over to your next line to untie that and then bring it in. And I think it's that buzz really of, you know, if I get this wrong, this is gonna look awful. So don't get it wrong. Also, another experience would be doing a get out. You know, so we're quite fortunate that we don't do overnight get outs. Well, when we do, it's very, very rare. Most of our get outs finish at 12. Or sometimes they can go up to 1 o'clock. But the moment that you've got a team of, I don't know, 6 or 7 people, the moment that front of house give you the house again, and that team of 9 people just run on stage to start taking things down, it's absolute bedlam. But when you're in the thick of it and you're getting stuck in, you could be losing 2 kilos in sweat by the end of it. But it's that is throwing a set out, not literally, out of a dock door or through the bar. It gets the adrenaline pumping. Definitely gets the adrenaline pumping. I did a get out this year. I think it's one of the first get outs in January, and like I was saying, when you've got a team of 9 people that are just getting stuck in and all that, and it's exhilarating. It's a good workout as well.
And for those of you who haven't seen the internal workings of a theatre from the stage, what Dill's describing there is above the stage. The fly floor is it's like a suspended corridor, isn't it, above the stage? And ropes go from the bits of scenery up into the fly tower and then down again. So he's describing literally pulling those ropes up, tying them off, running along this suspended corridor above the stage, pulling another rope, tying that off, and then running it. Which is why there's a theatre tradition that you shouldn't whistle on stage. And apparently this is because the people who used to be employed to do this work on the fly floors were sailors. They were used to be communicated to by whistling. So if you whistle on stage, you're quite likely to get a bit of scenery hit you on the head, as someone thinks it's a cue to drop something. Luckily we use cans now. This is a very specific question, I guess, for people who are still at school. A lot of work that's done in school focuses on performance, and A-level and GCSE theatre is mostly about performance. What can a younger person who's interested in working in technical theatre be doing whilst they're at school? Often with very limited equipment, I guess, in most schools.
Yeah. Before I answer that question, I'm going to talk about BOA. So Birmingham Austin Academy is a specialist performing arts academy for 14 to 19-year-olds, and they'll be celebrating their 10th anniversary next year. They have a technical theatre arts course, so they're quite lucky to use up-to-date equipment. And as well as the school has a sponsorship with a live events company called Production Resource Group. So they provide the school with lighting equipment for the students to practice on. And so their shows in the theatre look to a professional standard, and they bring their shows to us as well. They do look really, really, like they've been produced by like Cam Mac or whatever. Cam Macintosh, producer of Phantom and all that. In schools it's difficult because if you're new schools especially have got the money to plow into resources to for school performances, but if you're an existing school and you're struggling, it's you could almost state the case that we could be doing an end of year show, or but to make that end of year show work, you could just have 6 lights with a small 6-channel desk, and you can start off on that. It's better than nothing, and it's something that everybody can use, even the teachers can use it. It's okay. I think that's a really hard question. Even though when I was at school, we never had any fancy lighting, and we never used to do end of year shows or concerts as such. Or when we did, it was under the main lights of a school hall, because we never had a full lighting rig. If the school's got those kind of facilities, then persuade your teachers to let you use it under their supervision. But if you want to get somebody, if you want to practice yourself, then but the school can't provide it, it is tragic. I'll confess. It is. If the school says, we can't do it, it is a shame when schools are saying no to an opportunity that a child wants to do, to a young person, who wants to have that experience. See if there's a community group that has the facility or the capability to, and take part that way. I never got to use anything until I was at college. But yeah, it's even if you do a performing arts course at college, sometimes you might be asked to contribute to the technical elements of a show, which might involve, choosing songs to use in a scene or deciding what colours to use in a scene. Your teacher might turn around to you and say, "Do you want to press go? Do you want to operate the lighting for that show?" And I know we have Shakespeare Schools Festival every year with us, and we have 7 or 8 year olds who, under our supervision, are able to follow the script and know when to press go. That's another avenue as well that you could take. You can take part. There's loads of schemes like that. Like I know the National Theatre, they do the Connections Festival, so you can choose to operate a show. And Shakespeare Schools, obviously, you've got the opportunity to operate a show. There are plenty of other schemes as well that you can jump on. So that's what I would probably say is, convince your teachers to invest in a small 6-channel lighting rig on T-bars. They're not expensive, and everyone can use them. Or if your school can't, then see if there's anybody out there, like community groups, Amdrams, who will give you that opportunity and take part in schemes as well, like I just said, that the Connections or Shakespeare Schools. They'll give you the opportunity to.
Okay. And the other thing that I would say, just to come back to Henry V, is go to the theatre, watch theatre, and when you see something extraordinary, like someone being hanged on stage, ask yourself, how did they do that? When you see that, the likelihood is that you'll be watching the play and you'll be concentrating on the performance. But if you can remove yourself, particularly if you're interested in technical things, you can remove yourself slightly from the performance and watch how light works on stage, and watch how sound helps tell the story, and watch what happens in between the scenes as the sets move around. There's an incredible amount that you can learn just by watching other people doing their work. And just keep asking yourself the question, how did they do that? How have they achieved that magical effect? Because you can learn a lot from that. And
I
certainly
suffer with... Sorry, Toby. I suffer with, when I go and see a show, I've got a really bad habit of picking apart the technical elements of a show, seeing what lighting fixtures were in the rig, how did they move that flat, or did that flat have rubber casters or what, or was it on gliders? I try not to take myself away from the performance, because I'm there to see the show. I'm not there to pick apart all the lighting or the sound or the set. It's very easy for me to do that because obviously I work in that field and I can't help myself sometimes. But yeah, like you said, to take yourself away from the show. If you're technically minded, take yourself away from it and see how, and try and work out for yourself how they did that, how certain things happened, or how certain things worked. Something else I forgot to say as well: approach a professional theatre, see if you can get some work experience, and ask if you can do like a shadow call with someone. Or I remember doing a week's work experience at the Rep back in 2004, so when I was still studying, and I got to see how box office, stage management, casting, how all those different departments worked. So even though it wasn't relative to my career choice as to becoming a technician, it was still useful to know at the time how different areas, what roles and responsibilities different areas had. And I think, like you said a few weeks ago with Gemma, when you started out, it was a case of I'm on stage, but I didn't realise that there was X amount of people backstage making the thing work. So doing the work experience program actually opened my eyes, and will open everyone's eyes as well, to realise that it's not just somebody on stage. You've got somebody selling the tickets, you've got somebody marketing the show, you've got a lighting designer, a sound designer, you've got a front of house manager. You realise how many people are actually involved in how a show comes on stage and how a venue runs. Yeah, it's definitely useful.
Yeah. So I've got one final question, which is the question we've been asking all our guests, which is, if you were to meet the theatre genie and they could grant you one wish, what wish would you like to be granted?
Oh, no, that's a tough one. I mean, I think obviously, and everyone's in the same boat, they just want theatres to reopen. I don't know. Oh, it's one of those questions that I'm going to regret the answer, so I'm trying to think carefully about this. I'd probably say, give me X amount of money to get us up to scratch, and that's going to be a really contentious one to anybody watching who probably knows me. Yeah, I'll probably say give me X amount of pounds, so that we can actually do the sort of work that I want to see grace our stage, so that we can we can compete with the bigger theatres, and to get the work that I'd love to work on. So yeah, I mean, because we don't always get the frantic assemblies, the motion houses, or that sort of thing, and as much as I like what we get in, and as much as I love our Christmas show every single year, I'd love to be able to do more stuff. I'd love to be able to get Grey Eye in. I'd love to be able to get Motion House in regularly. I'd love Frantic Assembly to come back. Even Knee High, they do some brilliant work, and I would love to be able to work on a Knee High show. So, yeah, X amount of pounds, please, so that I can fulfil my rather perverted dream.
Well, we'll see what we can do. And for those of you who can get to Birmingham, once the theatres are open and running shows, I do impress upon you that it's really worth going to see the Birmingham Opera, just Theatre Anorak, just as a beautiful example of Edwardian theatre. The very historical building, the first rap theatre in this country. And they produce some fantastic work, and they have lots of really interesting stuff coming in. But definitely worth a visit, and very, very close to the train station, closer than the Rep. Not that it's a competition. Thank you so much, Dil, for talking with us, and thank you very much everyone who's participated in this webinar, and thank you also to the Arts Council of England, who've made these webinars possible due to their emergency response funding. All of these talks are available on our YouTube channel, Roustabout Theatre. And details of all sorts of other online opportunities are also on our website, which is www.roustabouttheatre.co.uk. Next week, we'll be talking to me. Well, David Lane, who's a fantastic playwright and dramaturg, will be talking to me, and we'll be talking about playwriting and theatre directing. So we hope to see some of you then. Thank you all very much, and thank you again, Dil.
Cheers, thanks, Toby.
Cheers, bye.